Ladies and gentlemen, today's the day we reveal the map. I wrote myself a script for the beginning, had a whole speech planned, but I think the best thing to do is just show it. So with almost no ado, I give you the incredibly HD, personal, for me, Elden Ring map. Because I have a massive OCD issue and I can't stand the idea of suddenly making recaps with these tools at my disposal at part 23 and not recapping the past 22, so here we go! In part 1 we found ourselves inside the Chapel of Anticipation. We began with the Memory of Grace, Urgent Heal, Assassin's Approach, a Broadsword, a Finger Seal, a Blue Crest Heater Shield, and the Confessor's Attire. We picked up the Tarnished Wizened Finger and opened the door. Then explored what little the area had to offer due to the only alternate path being a locked door before finding ourselves killed and thrown to the jagged beach rocks below by our first opponent, the Grafted Scion. After being tossed away, it would seem we washed ashore and were dragged into a cave by a horsehell/gahorse and a peculiar woman as we awoke to the sound of Torrent's snorts and Melina's rambling. She only spoke while we drifted in and out of consciousness and disappeared as soon as we were coherent, but did leave us the flask of crimson tears and the flask of cerulean tears. So we got that going for us, which is nice. In part 2, we explored the cave we found ourselves in at the end of part 1 and spoke with a spirit that guided us toward much lesser foes in the form of villagers that lost their minds and one Godric soldier boss that fell like a sack of bricks. Afterward, we were taught humility yet again as we broke ourselves upon the wall of a man named Tree Sentinel. After much toil, we decided the best course of action would be to obtain a weapon more befitting of one that calls themselves Death, and acquired the Scythe in Liurnia. Along the way, we happened upon Melina and Torrent again. Torrent was rather fond of us, so Melina gave us his whistle. No more walking. In part 3, we recalled the first sight of Grace we had happened upon in the great outdoors and made our way toward the middle of a storyline in attempts to see if fate would take us into account. Spoilers, it didn't, but I digress. We made our way down the beach, collecting our first rune item and a frozen raisin for our new horse companion. We found a lovely little turtle friend, then crept into the depths of the coastal cave to kill Bok's torturers prematurely, and we succeeded. After leaving the other side of the cave, we found ourselves on an island and in another conversation with Melina, who sent us to Round Table Hold to meet everybody. We met Corin, the priest, Roderica, the crestfallen spirit ash tender that gave us a jellyfish, Dialos, the lost leader, Fia, our bed companion, Master Hugh, the blacksmith, Incha, the edgelord, the twin maiden husks, the merchants of many goods, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, the asshole. In part 4, we began where we received Torrent's whistle, picked up the Limgrave West map and headed south to meet Merchant Kali, where we bought the telescope and the crafting kit. We went back to the gate front, killed all the soldiers, and grabbed the whetstone knife before heading to Aghill Lake North and concluding the day's adventure. In part 5, we picked up right where we left off and ran over to a suspicious talking tree and smacked it. It became a talking demi-human named Bok, which is potentially just as weird. We started his quest line and ported to the coastal cave where he was lying down after taking a beating from the demi-human chiefs we'd already killed somehow. Then Bok said we were reckless for getting his tailoring tools for him despite the fact we got them before we met him. Anyways, the next thing we did was port back to the first step, then run to the seaside ruins where we dropped down and killed the Alabaster Lord for his gravitas, before heading into the cave for the Halig Drake Talisman. We finished part 5 by baiting a dragon to farm souls for us and equipping the scythe. And part 6, we started with Merchant Kale and said hold my flask before getting thwarted by the tree sentinel again, before heading to Groveside Cave. We were thwarted once again, but this time by darkness, as we couldn't see shit in that cave. So we ported to the seaside ruins, ran south, and jumped the chasm to Weeping Peninsula in search of a lantern. I figured, well, while we're here, so we ran to the top of the soldier's tower and snagged the hand ballista. Ran all the way to the Castle Morn Lift Grace, grabbing the Ramparts Grace map of Weeping Peninsula and killing our first golem along the way. Then it was back north, grabbing the Golden Seed on our way all the way back to the tower. Then to the west till we found the Church of Pilgrimage and grabbed a sacred tear. Then southwest to the Fourth Church of America for another sacred tear before finally moving past the lumbering mausoleum and to the isolated merchant shack to buy the lantern. Part 7. We started this one at the Stormhill Shack Grace, which we got in episode 2 on our way to Liurnia for the scythe. We made our way to the Castleward Tunnel and fought Margit once before deciding it wasn't time for that and using the opportunity to demonstrate how the cowardly can circumvent punishment with quid abuse to save runes. The focus then shifted to Aghill Lake North as we headed into the Limgrave tunnels, killed a Stone Digger troll, and nabbed a Roar medallion, which was definitely part of the map before I started recording. And then we ported home to Fia and ended the episode with some best girl hugs and some scythe upgrades. Part 8 started with Fia hugs, then transitioned to another trek into Liurnia, where I went ahead and grabbed the map of Liurnia East, the Laskiar Ruins Grace, and past another animate mausoleum before delving into Rhea Lucarian crystal tunnels. Inside the tunnels, we killed a Crystallian and acquired the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell-Bearing 1 and handed it over to the Twin Maidens back home, which allowed them to sell more upgrades. I finished the day's progression off camera with a plethora of Skelly Boy farming to get the Grave Scythe and showed it off real cheeky like for a hot second at the end of the episode. In part 9 we tested the Grave Scythe out on the Bloodhound Knight Darrowil. Proved pretty effective and we got the Bloodhound's fang-curved greatsword. Then we hopped down the southern cliff and grabbed a large club before jumping the gap to Weeping Peninsula again and attempting to clear the sacrificial bridge in reverse, which somehow proved more difficult than facing the explosive ballista bolts head-on. After that was done, we talked to Arena and promised to deliver a note before snagging a Morning Star, buying the Crimson Amber Medallion, and jumping up a cliff via the spring jumps Torrent utilizes, and ending in front of our first puzzle tower. In Part 10, the puzzle tower got solved immediately because I'd done it before, so we got an extra spell slot from it and started skimming the cliff's edge on the eastern coast for secrets. We found the Impaler's catacombs, went in, killed the Erdtree Burial Watch Cat, and acquired the demi-human ashes. We headed out and grabbed the Grace beside the crater-pocked glade, killed some miners, and popped a squat down at the south of the Lookout Tower Grace after crossing a bridge born of destruction. Part 11 began with a jump into a pit with another scythe wielder at Ye Olde Round Table Hold. Mad Tongue Alberic was defeated and we got the PvP thing I don't remember the name of because Soulsborns aren't my favorite place to mess with that. But we explored down low after the fight before going back up and found the Cypher Pata. Then we ported south of the Lookout Tower and started exploring the forest. We happened upon the Demi-Human Queen and delivered the old permanent knockout and reaped the spoils, the Demi-Human Queen's staff. We went a tad north and picked up the Faith Knot Crystal Tear, then followed the northern coast of WP east to the Earthbore Cave where we killed a Runebear boss and yoinked the Spelldrake Talisman. We continued this day with a run around the Ailing Village, atop Peninsula's east-central bluff, picking up another sacred tear in the process. Finally, we ended 11 with a drop down just north of the cove between the village and the minor Erdtree to get the Lightning Strike spell, which was also definitely a part of the map before this recording. And in Part 12, we started right where we left off for a change, and dropped down to the Morn Tunnel, killed the poor Scaly Misbegotten, he died pretty fast if I recall, grabbed the Rusted Anchor and headed north to the Church Pilgrimage. We went into the graveyard next door and grave robbed the Gilded Iron Shield before concluding 12 in the Tombsward Catacombs. And it was in those very catacombs we started Part 13 as Death made his way through the undead he would not tolerate, laying them to rest a second time. Here I acquired the 9th cookbook of the nomadic warriors and dispersed to the cemetery shade. Then once again we found ourselves at the Aghill Lake North Grace, this time heading to East Limgrave and grabbing the Mistwood Outskirts Grace, the Limgrave East map, the Flask of Wondrous Physic, yet another sacred tear, and the Crimson Crystal tear. I then gave the Tree Sentinel his day with death, and his golden halberd was now mine as well. Then Part 14, the longest single-part journey of all thus far, began with deciding it now was time to kill Margit, so we did, and acquired our first talisman pouch, which was named properly before the recording for sure. Then we ran past the many perils of Stormvale Castle, ignoring all that we could, and going straight for the basement and the Rancor Call, Death's first usable spell. The next step in increasing Death's power was in the hands of another undead. Tibia Mariner in East Limgrave dropped a Death Root and skeletal militiaman ashes when we laid him to rest. At this point, we went back to the Round Table Hold, talked to a new resident named D that arranged a meeting for us with a beast clergyman named Gronk via a teleporter behind the church we were just at. We grabbed the summoning bell from the twins and ported to the Mistwood outskirts, traveled south to visit another merchant and get the left half of the Dectus medallion at Fort Height. Now for the right half, we took the teleporter D told us about, completely ignored his Beastman friend, and went south in Caelid all the way to the Fort Faroth. Now it was back to Liurnia, northwest for the Limgrave North map, then further for the Gatetown North Grace, and the Deathrite Bird, who made us look ridiculous. So we went back to the Liurnian Highway and traveled directly north. We stopped at the Artist Shack and got the Resurrection painting. Letting nothing stand in our way, we made it all the way to the Grand Lift of Dectus, and took it up to the Altus Plateau. Traveled east, went past 2 Tree Sentinel on guard duty together, and grabbed 2 more golden seeds at the Outer Wall Phantom Tree. then into the sealed tunnel for the smithing stone miner's bell bearing 2 behind an illusory wall. 14 finally ends with us going back to Round Table Hold and having Roderica upgrade our skeletal militiamen. Part 15 starts with some more Fia hugs. They never get old. Unless you're a speedrunner, then it's the last thing you want to do. But after hugs from our love, we talk to Master Hugh a bit and head out to finally keep our promise to Arena to get work delivering her letter. We port to Castle Morn Ramparts and head south a bit, run around in Poison for a bit, then head further south into Castle Morn. We run around the courtyard and killed all the revolting slaves and the soldiers they're revolting against. We're the good guys. Then we killed Pumpkinhead and went through the castle, up a tower where we did more killing, and nabbed the steel wire torch, the twin blade talisman, and the whip before resting behind the castle. Part 16 begins where 15 leaves off, with us dropping down and running to the Leonine Misbegotten fight and grabbing the grafted greatsword for Edgar, who I definitely didn't forget to mention in the Part 15 recap. Now that his duty is fulfilled, we go back to Arena to see them reunited, but plainly, she's dead. Edgar is warrantedly distraught over the death of his daughter, but decides the best reaction is to kill everyone he sees with an alignment less than 10 above neutral until the day he dies. Trying to talk sense into him gets a response comparable to Odin's response to Loki while he banishes Thor. Assuring ourselves that there's nothing to worry about there, we head to the Fourth Church of America and drop down a cave entrance on a small cliff just west of the church, but leave its exploration for Part 17. Part 17 begins with entering said cave, snatching a cookbook, killing the Miranda Blossom boss, and getting the Viridian Amber Medallion. After that, we port to the Church of Pilgrimage and head south for the Weeping Pin's minor Erd Tree. We take down the Avatar, pick up the Crimson Burst Crystal and Opaline Bubble Tears, then jump down the cliff to the west to make the mausoleum sit down before clearing out the Knight's Tower on the southern beach cliffs. A chest awaited us at the top. We opened that chest in Part 18, which started us on a bit of a boss rush. Turns out the chest was a teleporter and it sent us to Lanedell Royal Capital, specifically the Divine Bridge, where we fought the first of our big bads, and the first reason this is only a bit of a boss rush, because he isn't a boss. We take down our second golem for essentially no reward, port back to the isolated merchant shack and explore the beach. Decide it has nothing to offer, then jump back into Liurnia to kill the Deathrite bird. It's the second reason this is only a bit of a boss rush, because it did not die in a rush. But don't worry, the 25th time's a charm. We got the ancient Death Rancor for our troubles, and afterwards ported to Merchant Kale at the Church of Aled and headed northwest to the Stormfront Catacombs. Killed our second Watch Cat and acquired 2 noble ashes. Then I decided I'd gone insane and challenged another Deathbird, but this one was just called Deathbird, as opposed to Deathrite Bird, so it was fine. We one-shot it and picked up the sacrificial axe. 19 was born from the intention to clear out the remaining bosses in the Weeping Peninsula. We started at the Church of Pilgrimage yet again, and went southwest to break into our second jail and kill the prisoner, the ancient hero of Zamor. We did so and got Radagon's Scarseal as a reward. It was a great reward, as the only drawback is directly and completely counteracted by the benefit. Next we ported to the Castle Morn Ramparts, Grace, and made it night to kill the Knight's Cavalry and pick up the Barricade Shield and the Knight Rider Flail. Those were the only 2 bosses left in the peninsula, and there was still time, so we headed up to Limgrave and re-entered the stranded graveyard, then slotted a stone sword key to open up a fog wall. Behind said fog wall was a network of chariot runs that led to a banished knight, which gave us the Dragon Communion Seal, and the ulcerated tree spirit, which dropped the banished knight Oleg ashes. In Part 20, we did a bit of tidying up to bring our bosses met and bosses killed count together. First up was the flying dragon Agheel. We set out to the lake from the seaside ruins, took down the wyvern, and cut out his heart. A disembodied subtitle told us we could take it to the island we discovered in Part 3. Next up was the grafted scion, which meant another trip to Liurnia. We ported to Laskyar ruins and traveled a long way northwest, picking up the folly on the lake Grace, passing by a shack with with some guy stalking it, hitting the foot of the four belfries, the chest at the top of the four belfries, then finally going through the topmost teleporter with the imbued sword key that was in said chest. After doing so, we found ourselves at the end of the beginning. We came into the Grafted Scions boss arena from the opposite side we had before, killed it this time, and got the ornamental straight sword and the golden beast crest shield. This time the door on the alternate path was open, and behind it was the Stormhawk King, who hated us for being simple peasantry and said we could not summon him. But Stormhawk Dean was happy to be rescued and said, "Call me anytime, bro." In part 21, we started at Aghill Lake South and started clearing out the peasants and soldiers atop the ruin chunks in the area. Before getting killed by a sorcerer we accidentally called an archer. Then we attacked from a different angle and encountered an Animorph noble capable of turning into a bear. He phased through the floor, which kinda killed the mood, but oh well. We reloaded and killed him for a larval tear. We then headed north to the nearby ruins and met a Pumpkinhead boss and killed a Mad Pumpkinhead boss and met Selen. We bought all of our spells, all of them, and no dialogue changed. We traveled back to the Weeping Pin to see our new spot to see if the story progressed over there. It didn't, but we got the ambush shard. Went back to the original Selen location, still nothing. Oh well. We dropped down the bluff and killed a whole bunch of people escorting a caravan and stole the axe out of the chest in the back. We're the good guys. Northward more into the ravine north of the lake, where we met Bloody Finger Neriju, who it turns out is not nice. We killed him and claimed Reduvia. Then a man ran up screaming about helping us fight him before vanishing in front of us. Oh well. Into the cave we went, fought through some highwaymen and killed Patches because he deserves it. We can still get everything he would normally sell if you helped him and made him become a merchant by turning in his bell bearing at the twins back home. Except this thing. It's a candelabra that sends out magma candle wax whips. It's okay, I've heard. And finally, in part 22, we began the day at Aghill Lake North Grace. Traveled further north to a camp of locals that had befriended wolves, killed all of them and their wolves, and stole their Armorer's Cookbook 1. We're the good guys. We kept the northward motion into the Murkwater catacombs, but not before slipping on the gravestones and falling to our death. Once inside, we met the Grave Warden duelist and killed him, releasing his hold on the ashes of banished knight Ingval. Next, you guessed it, north. Into the High Road Cave. We picked up the Shamshir while fighting our way through, just before making it to the end, killing the Guardian Golem and picking up the Blue Dancer Talisman. Oh, good lord, that was a lot of work. It was super fun. There was a lot. Months of map making, weeks of icon creation, and days of video editing. Not sure whether I should be happy or concerned that I enjoyed it. Anyways, I hope all the effort was worth it, and some people can get some enjoyment out of it. I was going to add some gameplay to the end of the video if it turned out to not be that long after doing the recap, but it's still about 23 minutes and I'm pooped, so I think we'll leave it as is. Hopefully all the effort was worth it and people get some enjoyment out of it. Let me know what you think, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and love you, goodbye!